Mr. Bob's Railroad Workbench. I'm Bob Lettenberger. Mr. Bob, Education Director for the National Railroad Museum. Here at Mr. Bob's Railroad Workbench, we talk about math, science, history, and trains, and do it all with some fun activities. If you're watching today on Facebook Live and want to type in a question, feel free to do so. We'll answer those right after the segment. If you type in and let us know who you are and where you're watching from, we'd love to hear from you as well. And make sure that you like the National Railroad Museum's Facebook page. Well, today a little bit of history here on Mr. Bob's Railroad Workbench. We're looking again at the Pacific Railroad, or as we call it, the Transcontinental Railroad. And the question today is, well, what happened in railroad history on May the 8th? Yesterday, May 10th, was Mother's Day, and of course it's the day that we know as the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad. May 10th, 1869, 151 years ago, Andrew Russell snapped that famous picture of the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad. But the bigger question is, what happened on May 8th, 1869? Well, to tell you the truth, what was supposed to happen on May 8th, 1869 didn't. That was the day that the Transcontinental Railroad was supposed to be completed, the day that the gold spike was to be driven. But there's some interesting history behind why the event was delayed for 2 days. To find out, we need to visit a small town in southwest Wyoming, Piedmont. Today, if you go through Piedmont, well, there's not much left. It's a ghost town. It was a place where charcoal was made. The coke ovens are still there. There's a few tumble-down buildings. Yes, this is a western ghost town. But in the 1860s, as the railroad built through this area, Piedmont was a bustling little town. About 20 structures, the coke ovens we saw, a sawmill for milling out railroad ties. Eventually, the railroad changed its course. That would be the Union Pacific, and Piedmont became a ghost town. But leading up to May 8th or May 10th, 1869, Piedmont played a significant role in U.S. history. This gentleman, Thomas Durant, Vice President of the Union Pacific Railroad, and, well, pretty much all-around scoundrel and bad guy in our story, was on his private train headed to Promontory for the driving of the gold spike. Now, Durant, throughout the construction of the Union Pacific, had been scheming different ways that he could make as much money personally off of the project as he possibly could. And many of those ways, not only immoral, unethical, but also patentedly illegal. By time the Transcontinental Railroad was nearing its completion, the Union Pacific was strapped for cash, and paying their debts had become quite a hard deal. Durant, in his private rail car with his party, as you see here, as they approached Piedmont, Wyoming, came to a sudden stop. Workers had piled railroad ties across the track, blocking the train's path. Over 200 angry workers stormed Durant's train. They uncoupled his private car, moved it onto a siding, chained it to the tracks, and locked the switches at both ends of the siding, and then demanded back pay. You see, they had not been paid for several months, and rumor had it, and was true, that the Union Pacific was about to release their services as they no longer were needed to cut ties, as the railroad was about to be completed. The workers demanded over $200,000 in back pay. Well, a telegraph was sent east to New York to Oaks Ames, president of the railroad, and another was sent west to Ogden, Utah, to Grenville Dodge, the chief engineer, in both cases asking for help. Ames began to gather up what money he could find, and Grenville Dodge, being a retired Army general, summoned the cavalry. However, the telegrapher happened to be in cahoots with the workers there at Piedmont, and the telegraph call for help to the cavalry never went through, and so they never responded. In the end, Ames came up with about $50,000, which was paid to the workers, and that satisfied them for the moment. There's an interesting twist to the story, however. It turns out that Davis and Company, the tie cutters, happened to be partially owned by Thomas Durant, and it's believed that this was just another scheme for him to bilk more money out of the Union Pacific. Now, there's another little twist to this story. Before Durant's train could actually get to Promontory for the gold spike ceremony, they had another problem to deal with. The area had been saturated by rain several days before the 6th of May, and the Weber River through Weber Canyon in northeast Utah, as you see here, had become a raging torrent and had washed out some of the bents or bridge supports holding up the bridge over the river, making it impassable. The bridge crew had to be recalled from Promontory, some 60 to 75 miles west of Ogden, all the way back up into Weber Canyon in order to fix the bridge so that Durant and his party could pass and attend the gold spike ceremony at Promontory. Thus, what should have happened on May 8th never actually took place until May 10th, when those two locomotives met at Promontory in what was called the Mountain Wedding. A little bit more about the Pacific Railroad and some of the scandal that was involved in this great national effort. You know, the National Railroad Museum inspires lifelong learning by providing dynamic educational opportunities through the preservation of railroad objects, engaging exhibits, and innovative programs. As a non-profit educational institution, we are supported by both public and private donations, and of course, our museum members. For more information on how you can help support the National Railroad Museum, visit our website, nationalrrmuseum.org. And as always, thank you so very much for all of your support. Yeah, I'm Mr. Bob. Thank you for visiting Mr. Bob's Railroad Workbench, and we hope to see you here again real soon.